Good evening. Good evening to the team that gets it clean. It's been 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I'm back. I'm back from a well needed vacation, from the stresses of the world of the daily job. But I'm back refreshed, revived, and refocused. But during the vacation, one thing that did not change was my passion for the job that we do in sterile processing. And I got back and I actually found someone had inboxed me and they asked me a question. They were at a hospital and they needed to know where to buy the tool to do the tissue test. Well, they didn't even know it was a tissue test. What they actually said is, Miss Green Golden, I need your help. We need to be able to check something. And I remember when I worked for you, you were doing something about the air negative and positive. So they really didn't even know. What I want to say is that as sterile processing professionals, it is our job to stay abreast of everything that we should be doing in our department. Uh, there's a lot of documentation that you should do. And one of the things is about negative and positive. A surveyor coming in may want to know if he's on the clean side, is this negative pressure, positive pressure? If he's on decon, is this negative pressure, positive pressure? And that's not the time for you to run around and ask about some tool to check it. Um, and you know it should be done. It should be being checked daily. Uh, I will tell you that at my hospital, we have both things going. We do it manually and it is monitored by my engineering department, but they don't always monitor it correctly because there have been times where we had no air exchanges at all in our department. You can smell the stifling of the sterilizer, the steam, and they haven't called us. They haven't said anything. So you have to be aware all day. Even though you check it daily, you need to check it. Even though you check it in the morning, you need to check it throughout the day to be sure you are getting the air exchanges you need and that you are still positive on the clean side and negative on the decontam side. Opening doors changes the flow. So, what I want to talk about today to answer that question, which I did answer the question for the tech that needed the information, but what I wanted to let you all know is that air management is a crucial function of infection control and prevention, and it helps control cross contamination and disease transmission. Understanding decontam, you're dealing with bioburden contaminated instruments. You're spraying water. Some of you all are sloshing water back and forth. You have that bacteria, viruses floating around in the air. Therefore, we need to maintain a negative pressure and we need to be sure that we have air exchanges. Now, I was at a hospital that actually had a fan in decon because they were hot. That's not acceptable, people, because the fan just takes the viruses and the bacteria and floats it around the room, back on top of you. And if you're not wearing your PPE like you should, you've got those viruses and bacteria little pieces on you. You don't even know they're there. But you cannot have a fan. So I did a little bit of research to be sure that other than knowing that this is part of infection control, and we are an integral part of infection control. So, the American Institute of Architects, their 959 recommends that negative pressure and no fewer than 6 air exchanges per hour in the decontamination area. Now, Amy actually recommends 10 air exchanges per hour. Um, I will tell you that at my hospital right now, we're doing 16 in decon. It's all up to your engineering and how they can actually get the air exchanges to go. 16 air exchanges, with at least 2 of them being fresh air coming through that area at all times, maintaining negative pressure. That's why if you have a pass-through window, the window needs to be closed when you're not passing something through. Because if you leave the pass-through window open, the balance of negative and positive changes, and your positive area will become negative, and you will allow the bacteria and the viruses to come over to the clean side. So that window has to be closed. The doors have to be closed. This is a must in your sterile processing department. On my clean side, which is a positive area, we are running 16 air exchanges an hour, and 2 of them are fresh air. So this is important. This is very important. Where we work and how we do our work is important, but our atmosphere, our surroundings, the engineering part of our department is most important. I tell you that the sterile storage area should limit contaminants. You can't have stuff coming all in there. That's why when you open your boxes in the breakout area and not where you're actually storing your equipment and your packs and your supplies, because you don't want that dust particles coming into that area. That area should have at least 4 air exchanges per hour. The sterile storage area can be a separate room, which in my department, it is a separate room with a door. Doors. We have the door where they can enter to actually bring the supplies in, and then we have the door that we enter to actually go get the supplies. Those doors remain closed. The temperature has to be a certain level. In my department, they say it's absolutely cold because we're maintaining about 65 degrees in that area to make sure that there is no sweating of our packs, but the air exchanges are most important. Uh, what we have going on is more than just putting the trays together. You have to know more than that. A surveyor coming in will ask a director about their air exchanges, about their positive and negative. The OR has the same thing going on. This is something we have to have. And that's why one of the things we talked about during this pandemic was that the sterile processing, the operating room, you were in some of the safest places in the hospital because you actually had air exchanges. You were shut down. You were off from other people. You were in your own bubble, a safe bubble, which was something and a good place to actually be. So within the hospital, if you paid attention to your hospitals, they have to have negative pressure rooms for people who have certain diseases. Now, all of these negative pressure areas, positive pressure areas, you have to be able to know if the area is maintaining its negative pressure or its positive pressure. Here comes the tissue test. So, uh, many years ago, nowadays in modern hospitals, they have contraptions on the wall that tell you that the room is negative. It tells you the room is positive. But those things can go down. We know technology can let you down. Therefore, it is imperative that you know how to do the tissue test. Hi, Danielle. That you know how to do the tissue test manually for when technology lets you down, because no survey is going to understand that the technology isn't working in the hospital today. Therefore, we really don't know if this is negative or positive. You have to know at all times. So you hold a piece of tissue, 1 ply, doesn't have to be a thick piece of tissue, and the door has to be shut. Now, some people open the door, shut the door, and throw the tissue under there. You have to allow the pressure to balance itself after the door has been opened. So once the door has been opened, you take a piece of tissue, doesn't have to be the whole piece of tissue, just a piece of tissue, and you hold it at the bottom of the closed door. If the air pressure is appropriately negative, the tissue will be sucked toward the room. Literally, it'll suck it right out of your hand. And if it does that, this is an acceptable airflow. If the tissue blows back towards the hallway and there seems to be no pull in the room, then that room doesn't have negative pressure and you cannot use it for patient care. And then on our side in decon, we need to cease and desist whatever it is we're doing, call engineering, and let them know that our decon no longer has negative pressure. Now, some people work right through. You have no negative pressure and you're in there just washing and slinging and slopping, and All of this is coming right back on you. So it is imperative that you know how to do the actual tissue test. We're going to take a commercial and come back right after this. To the team that gets it clean, I'm glad to be back. Okay, well, maybe we're not going to go to commercial, so we'll keep going. All right, we're back. So, if you have any questions about the tissue test, please put them in the chat box and I will answer them. Now, for the second part, I wanted to talk about my latest article, which happens to be in the Process magazine for July, August. It's a perspective from a professional, which I am. And it talks about the missteps and mistakes that are made in sterile processing on a daily basis. And the question is the missteps and mistakes. Does your sterile processing do this? And a lot of people will look around and say, "Oh, we're perfect. My SPD, we got it going on. We don't make any mistakes. We do everything right." Well, I'm going to stand up and say, not necessarily is that true, because when you're dealing with the human factor, you have fallouts. That is a reality. There are fallouts, but we don't want to have fallouts because we don't want to impact patient care. I felt the need to share my perspective on mistakes and missteps because we had it to happen. And when I tell the story about the missteps, the mistakes that were made, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we were not following the IFU. Now, it's not because we didn't have the IFU. It's not because we had not done a competency. It's not because my people aren't professional. It was not because they just didn't know. It's because human beings always take time to try to find a shortcut here or there. And that's why, as a professional who is committed to your field of work and to your patients, and you want to give world-class service, have to always make sure you are following the instructions for use. You see, you cannot clean fast. I know the doctor said he needs this, and the OR called and said we're going to need it right away, quick, 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 quick. You cannot clean fast. They should not ask you to clean fast. And you have to stand and hold the banner up and say, I can't clean this fast. Because number one, the IFU said it was going to take 5 minutes to soak. So that's 5 minutes soaking. I can't be cleaning and soaking at the same time, doesn't work. Soaking means to soak. That means to immerse it, leave it alone for 5 minutes. And then you follow the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. So we actually had a GYN instrument. It's called the MyoSure. And the MyoSure gives very clear instructions for use. And we've had it for several years. And at some point, we were doing our best work. And then somebody decided to take a shortcut. And then the next person took another shortcut. So I'm going to tell you about the shortcuts. It's supposed to be soaked. It's supposed to be washed off. It's supposed to be flushed and brushed and rinsed copiously with sterile water if you don't have um, treated water coming through your sink. And then it comes over to the clean side. And once it's on the clean side, they should check it. Now, this is why you need a some type of equipment that allows you to look down cannulated instruments so that you can see what is going on. At that time, we did not have that particular apparatus in my department. So the person that got it on the clean side picked it up, wiped it off. Maybe they looked through the optical lens. I'm going to say that they didn't. But the IFU says we're supposed to clean the distal end of that instrument with the cleaning paste to be sure that there's nothing on the lens. And we didn't do that. So we wiped it off. We did, maybe they blew some air through it. I'm not going to say because I was not there. But what I'm going to say is we didn't follow the IFU because that instrument was processed. It is processed in steam. And it was processed. It followed the parameters of sterilization were met as far as we were concerned for the actual tray. The problem came when the tray was put on a case cart for a patient case. Not only was it put on the case cart, it got into the operating room. My operating team members, which are supposed to white balance and check scopes before they use them, they didn't do their job. So here we have 3 points of human failure: the person cleaning it, the person reassembling and processing it, and then the person that opened it up to put it on the field for patient use. Nobody did what they were supposed to do. So when they actually passed the instrument to the physician for actual use to be put into the patient's vaginal area up to the uterus, when they first put it in, they looked up on the screen. On the lens, they could see red. Red, that's like blood. Everybody started falling out. They called us. We got them a new one, but the damage had already been done. Understand, team that gets it clean. The damage had already been done. It had already been put into a patient. Understand, every instrument that you touch routinely has the ability to touch a patient. So it had touched the patient. They quickly switched it out. They finished their case. The doctor went and told the patient that he had used a dirty instrument in her case. The patient immediately, as anybody would, was freaked out. She was concerned that she was going to get hepatitis. She was concerned about HIV. She was concerned about a lot of things. We did not do a blood draw because that particular contamination does not require blood draw. But she wanted to know why they didn't draw blood and see if she had gotten HIV or hepatitis. So she spent some days because the doctor told her, I'm going to give you antibiotics just in case you could get an infection. The patient had other morbidities. So the antibiotic irritated her colitis. So now she had a flare up from the colitis. So she was mentally distraught. Her colitis was acting up. She was worried that she was going to get sick, have a disease, and die. I am almost sure that my hospital did damage control as much as possible. But at the end of the day, sterile processing did not do their due diligence by this patient. We failed this patient. We failed. And that just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how you cannot follow the instructions that were there. So I immediately had to have what I call a stand down, meaning we stop doing what we're doing with the group that's there and we pull out the IFU and we go over this process right away. We do it for every shift. And we have been talking about this misstep, this mistake for a while now because it just hasn't gotten out of my system. We impacted a patient's life, and that just isn't fair to the patient that entrusted us with her care. And all we had to do was follow instructions and clean an instrument and process it according to the IFU and make sure the parameters were met. And we did not do that. And I'm sorry to say this happens in America, all over the world, every day. Every day patients are impacted. In fact, some of them you don't even know about, because I dare say they didn't catch it in the OR. Nobody noticed that the instrument was dirty. They used it anyway. And if they did notice it, human beings, sometimes we act like we didn't see it. I didn't see it was dirty, because I don't want to start all the confusion. I don't want to have to tear down my whole back table. So I just act like I didn't see it. But that is not fair to the patient when you are here to do no harm. Your job is patient care, even though you don't look at that patient eyeball to eyeball. And we cannot afford to have missteps and mistakes on things where we have the answer. The answer is right there in your IFU. It's right there. We couldn't, if we had to go to court, we had nothing to stand on to explain why that instrument was dirty when they took it out of a tray that had gone through a process and put it in the patient. So remember, we say if it isn't clean, you cannot sterilize it. This is a real fact of, if it is not clean, you cannot sterilize it. This had gone through the sterilization process. The sterilization process paperwork said the parameters of sterilization were met. Time, temperature, steam, pressure, everything was correct. But you cannot sterilize a dirty instrument. The sterilizer does not know that you did not do your due diligence and clean it. So it doesn't have the ability to kick it out and say, this one isn't working. And then if my OR team does not do their part in checking behind us, this is how we use an instrument that is contaminated. And this is what happened. And I was not happy as the manager. And my team is not happy as the team, because they wish I could stop talking about it. But I cannot, because that could have been me. That could be you. And I said to them, if this was you and you found out about it, how would you feel? And everybody's like, I wouldn't be happy. Then why would you put a product out that you wouldn't want used in your case? Why would you not follow the instructions? There's nothing, and I understand we have to turn trays over. Our objective is to get the trays processed. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But you cannot clean fast. You have to be sure it's clean before it leaves your decontamination area, if it is manual. Now, this particular instrument actually went through the washer. This shows you why the washer decontaminator is in a machine. It didn't look at the end either and scrub down there and say, oh, they didn't scrub this off, let me scrub it. So even though there was impingement in the washer decontaminator, how that instrument was in the tray or how it was laying, the impingement did not wash that end of the scope. Therefore, blood was still on it. The blood dried. And when they actually went down the cannulated part of the instrument, they didn't have anything, I assume, but they didn't look at they didn't polish the scope end. They didn't polish it. It says to wipe it off and polish it to be sure it is clean. So you have to follow all the instructions, all of them, in order to do what you need to do. That's our purpose. Question comes up: I think the people after decontam missed, or just didn't want to acknowledge? I think that the person in decon didn't do their due diligence and didn't do their job in an effort to do something fast. And the person who actually got the tray to process it, to reassemble it, did not do their job. Because part of reassembly is checking the instrument. Now I have in place where it has 2 people have to check and sign off on it. Can't trust one. I'm thinking with 4 eyes, we might be able to see what we're supposed to see. We also bought the actual instrument that's needed to look down and to see in the cannulated area and to help us to see what we've got going on. What I will tell you is that blood had actually dried on the inside part of this cannulated instrument. And when we actually went back and soaked it like we were supposed to soak it, blood was, after it's soaked, blood was being released. So the soaking allowed the blood to loosen up. So not only was the end of the scope dirty, this particular scope had somebody else's blood and body fluid still dried and hardened on the inside walls. Now, that's another class to determine how much DNA is left in viruses and bacteria on the inside wall of something after it dries and it's been through the steam process and dried some more. But this instrument was just dirty. There's no other way, there's no other word we can use. This instrument was dirty, and we gave it to a patient, and that has bothered me. It has bothered me from the time it happened. I was able to go on vacation and refocus and think about this and come back to my team and say, we've got to work on it. Do I think the people missed the debris? I think it said the debris. You know, with cannulated instrumentation, let me just say, your naked eye really cannot see. We know we cannot see. That's why they've now made equipment that allows you to put a camera down so that it can see. I got the one with the camera and with the screen so you can look at the screen and see what you're looking at as you pass that camera through. And these particular instruments are different kinds from different companies. I'm not selling it, so I'm not going to call any one company out, but they work. I think you should have one on the dirty side, decon, and you should have one on the clean side. I think that before any cannulated instrument is put through and sent through, they should know in decontam that it's clean. As a security check, we have one on the clean side. So before you process it in reassembly, you check it to be sure you say it's clean. Many times cannulated instruments get onto the field and they have debris on the inside that nobody doing the case even sees it because they're busy doing the case and they're pushing or flushing. They didn't even notice something fell out. And it could fall into the patient's uh, orifice, the abdomen, or wherever they're doing the surgery. And if the patient's body cannot effectively get rid of it, it causes an infection, and nobody even knows it happened. That's why it's important that we clean it. So I just want to tell you, me, the professionals of sterile processing who put trays together every day, who clean instruments every day, to be diligent, to follow the IFU, to be sure you're following all the steps. You cannot find a shortcut. Miss Golden, I found the short. You can't find a shortcut. You're to follow step 1 through 10 if that's what they gave you. And you're to do every step according to what they wrote. It is imperative for the care of your patient. And we are the team that gets it clean. Our job is cleaning, reassembly, processing for patient care. And I just ask everybody to be more diligent about what you're doing. Because what you do, you hear me say it all the time, what you do matters. Your job is important. And you can hinder a patient's surgical outcome. You know, like I said, this patient might have a little bit of PTSD by now because she's been sitting there just waiting for the next shoe to fall. So understand, patients come to the hospital because they have problems. If they come to surgery or they're using any instruments you handle, they're depending on you to do your job correctly every day. We don't have the ability to sit back and have a bad day because what you touch touches a patient. So that's my thought for this Thursday. Do what you do and do it right. Follow the IFU and understand you take care of patients every day and your impact is important. This is Sharon Greene Golden. This has been Thursday Thoughts. I'm glad to be back. Thank you.